Hello, good morning, dear students. As you know very well, that we have been doing an analysis of Poetics written by Aristotle. In our last lecture, we did the chapter 1 to 3 of the Poetics. We know very well that Aristotle has written the Poetics in order to give his ideas and thoughts about the poetry and specifically the tragedy. He has written too much in a great detail about the tragedy. In the last three chapters, we saw that he explained about the imitation, what is imitation, and then he divided the different fine arts, classified them, and then he gave us the differences of the different fine arts, the, the classification of the fine arts according to their differences. That is the difference of means, the difference of objects, and the difference of manner. So on the basis of those three levels, he has classified the fine arts. Today, we have been doing chapter 4 and 5. Now in chapter 4, Aristotle has given us the origin and development of poetry. Because poetry is also one of the important medium or the part of the fine arts. It is the imitation of the reality. It is the imitation of the nature. It is the imitation of the human passions, emotions, etc. So, in this chapter, he traces the origin and development of poetry. It is the dramatic poetry that he increasingly confines his attention. As I told you that he has focused himself with the dramatic poetry in the poetics. In Aristotle's opinion, poetry had its origin in four human instincts. So here he defines how the poetry originates and what is the origin of poetry, how the poetry comes out. So he tells us that there are the four human instincts which have the origin of poetry in his opinion. And we have to see them. Number one, the natural human instinct to imitate things as we observe in the case of monkeys and children. So we human beings have the natural instinct to imitate the things which are there, which are in actual, in nature. So we are not doing it, I mean painfully, or I mean intentionally, but it is the natural instinct of the human being to imitate the things. And it is in the same way as in the case of monkeys and children. We see what the monkeys and children do. They imitate. Monkeys imitates the human beings as well as the children imitate their parents, their friends, their circle. And by imitating, they learn the new things as well. By imitating, they enjoy. They also get the pleasure. So it is the natural human instinct to imitate the things, and that's why the poetry comes out. Then he tells us the second instinct, that is the natural pleasure we get from a good work of imitation. So if there is any good work of imitation, good poem, good essay, good novel, good drama, definitely we get the natural from that. So since it is the natural pleasure we get from the work of imitation, the poetry is being written. Number three, that he talks about the human instinct, natural human instinct. That is, we have this instinct to learn and know something which is new. And this also provides us a pleasure. And this is the reason that we get pleasure from an imitation of an object we have never seen before. Because we have this instinct. And what kind of this instinct is? That we want to know, we want to learn something new which we don't know. And this learning and knowing of something new also provides us pleasure. So we read poetry, we read drama, and we please ourselves by their reading. The fourth instinct about which Aristotle talks is our instinctive pleasure in harmony and rhythm. That is, the human being has an instinct to enjoy the pleasure, natural pleasure. It is it is the pleasure that we enjoy in harmony and rhythm. We have to make no efforts to make pleasure, to enjoy harmony and rhythm. It is our natural instinct that we enjoy the songs, the musics, the rhythm, the harmony, etc. So, in this way, Aristotle explains in his Poetics how poetry grew out of these natural causes. So, these were the natural causes of the human instinct that the poetry came in existence. Now he talks about its development, how the poetry developed into different or into various genres. So he says that the poetry went into two directions. Number one, he says that the poets who were more serious imitated noble action of noble personage. So they composed panegyrics, that is the public speech, on the great and hymns to God. So there were the poets who were more serious. So they imitate the noble action of the noble persons, noble characters. And in this way they wrote the epics, the dialogues, like Plato has written dialogues. And they have also written hymns, songs to God, songs which have been sung in the praise of God. So the nature of such works was serious one. And they talks about the noble actions. Their characters are better than the average characters. And from this creation grew epic or heroic poetry. So from these writings, that is the writing of the seriousness or of the noble action, it grew epic writing or the heroic poetry. And we have the examples, he gives the examples like Iliad and Odyssey of Homer. So the epics written by Homer, two epics, Iliad and Odyssey, are the best example of the serious work, best example of the noble man in action. Noble characters have been portrayed into these epics. And then, out of epic, gradually tragedy came out. That is tragedy rose, tragedy began. Similarly, so he is talking about the development of poetry. So one way, that was of the serious poetry, and the serious poetry leads us to the epic writing. And the best example of the epic writing has been Iliad and Odyssey, the epics written by Homer. Now the second one, that is the second direction in which the poetry went. That is, there were the poets of frivolous nature who imitated actions of trivial persons and this way produced invectives, insulting language, or personal satires. So, another kind of poets were the poets of frivolous nature, a joyful nature, or we can say trivial kind of nature, and they imitated the actions of the trivial persons. That is, they used satires, they used the insulting language, they abused the follies of the human beings. So, this was the second kind of development of poetry, and this led to the writing of comedy. So, the comedy derives from iambic meters or from personal satires. So, now we have the two type of poetry here, that is epic, then tragedy, because tragedy is the development of epic, and then we have the comedy. So tragedy is written for the serious action, whereas the comedy has been written for the trivial actions or for the frivolous actions, that we have the satires specifically. So here Aristotle then again notes the peculiar position of Homer, because at that time Aristotle had only the examples of the past. Now we may have many more examples of such writings, but at that time Homer was the best example for him. So he says that Homer is the poet who excels both in the serious and the frivolous, and therefore he is the greatest poet in the serious style, as well as he is the greatest poet in the field of comic and light. And we have seen the example that his Iliad and Odyssey epics are the serious epics, while his Margites is a comic one. So we can include Margites into comedy, whereas Iliad and Odyssey can be regarded as serious epics or the tragedies as well. Then Aristotle gives us a picture of ridiculous in Margites, which is the essence of comedy. Because Margites is a comedy, and what is there in comedy? We have seen that it is the imitation of the frivolous actions or of the trivial persons actions are there in comedy. So Aristotle says that Margites has the picture of ridiculous, and here the word ridiculous is very important according to Aristotle, because the ridiculous is the essence of comedy. Without ridiculous, comedy cannot take place. And then in the chapter 5th, he discusses the subject matter of comedy and then compares and contrasts epic and tragedy. He also explains ridiculous. What do we mean by ridiculous? Ridiculous means when you ridicule someone with a kind of satire, with a kind of irony, with a kind of abusive language, that is you are making fun of someone. So is comedy has the essence of ridiculous in it. Without ridiculous essence, no comedy is there. So now let's have the subject matter of comedy. As he defines the ridiculous, that comedy is a representation of characters of a lower type, worse than the average. As we saw in the tragedy or in the epic, epic is a representation of characters of higher type, better type than the average persons, than the average we find in our life. But here, by lower or worse, Aristotle doesn't mean morally bad. But he says that by lower and worse means ridiculous. So here, the definition of comedy is, according to Aristotle, that comedy is a representation of characters of ridiculous type, of ridiculous. Then he defines ridiculous as well. He says ridiculous means a species of the ugly. That is the human being, or that is the man of the ugliness. But here ugly does not cause any pain or harm to the audience or to the others. So here ridiculous characters don't cause any pain or hurt anyone, rather they produce laughter. They are the productive of laughter. So ridiculous characters in comedy functions or arouse our laughter, arouse our joy, enjoyment, smile, etc. Or we have the sense of humor in comedy. So this was the comedy. Now Aristotle tells us about epic and tragedy. Okay, what are the similarities between epic and tragedy, and what are the dissimilarities, that is the difference between epic and tragedy. And then he asserts his view which one is better. So let us first see the similarities between epic and tragedy. He says that both of them represent serious action of serious characters. I think it must be very clear right now, because we have spoken so many times what is epic, what is tragedy, and the seriousness is attached to epic and tragedy according to Aristotle. You should keep in your mind the word serious. So the serious action is there, serious characters are there. So epic and tragedy are the representation or are the imitation work of serious actions of serious characters. These characters, these actions, they are better than the average. So the average human behavior, average moral code, average conduct is there. In epic and tragedy, we find the better than the average. So, because it is the creativity, poetry is the creativity. So, creation, that is, a poet has right to create either better or worse. So, if it is better, if it is the presentation of better, then it is epic or tragedy. If it is the presentation of worse, then it is a comedy. So, it must be clear to you. Then he says that both are done in a grand and elevated style. So, epic and tragedies have grand and elevated style, dignified and prestigious style are used. Now the differences between the two. What are the differences between epic and tragedy? Aristotle says that epic is narrative. We also understand. Epic is narrative. There is narration in epic. Whereas in tragedy, we have dramatic. So the tragedy is always in a dramatic form. There is action in tragedy. There is narration in epics. This is the basic difference I think you must have in your mind while you describe epic and tragedy. So tragedy, dramatic in form, whereas epic is narrative in form. Epic uses only one meter, and this meter is the heroic, whereas tragedy can use the different meters in different parts of it. For example, verse for dialogue and song for the choric part. So in tragedy, the poet can use verse, that is the poems, for dialogue, as well as he can use song for the choric part. So the choric or the chorus can sing there, and that can be the part of tragedy. So, but in epic, in epic, according to Aristotle, only one meter is used, and that is called the heroic, because that is the narration. There is no action at all. Epic is much longer because its action is not limited by time and place. We know that epic is we have the examples, our Indian examples, we also have Mahabharata, we have great Ramcharitmanas. They are much longer, and their action is not limited by time and place. So there is no restriction of time, because the Mahabharata starts from where? We know very well, from 3 generations back and goes to the 3 generations ahead. In the same way in Ramcharitmanas we do see. So, and tragedy, he says, that tragedy is not larger, not large one. It is confined to a single circuit of the sun. There is no barrier of time and place in epic, he says, but there is barrier of time and place in tragedy according to Aristotle. And he defines it as a single circuit of the sun. That is, the tragedy should cover the action of 24 hours only, or of one day only. So the place and the action should be confined to 24 hours according to Aristotle. So tragedy is confined to the single circuit of the sun. And from this statement, the critics found or derived the unities of time and place. We will discuss about unities of time and place further in our next lectures, or we will also discuss about the unities of time and place with other critics like John Dryden and others. So, however, Aristotle is here not making any rule so far tragedy is concerned. He is just making a statement of general practice. Okay, this is the general practice. He says that tragedy should confine to a single circuit of the sun. But epic is the larger one, and it is not restrained by time and place. He also says that like epic in the beginning, tragedy had no fixed rule. So there are no fixed rule, but he is just making the statement, or the usual practice of that time. He is just quoting that practice, or he is just telling about that practice of the tragedy. And in the end of this chapter, now Aristotle asserts his view. And what is his view? What he asserts? He says the superiority of tragedy over epic. He says that tragedy is superior to epic. Why? He says that basic difference, he says that all the elements of an epic are found in tragedy. So all the elements, what are the elements of epic? For example, we have the plot, we have the characters, we have the incidents, we have the unities, other thing, catharsis, etc. These all are the elements of epic, and they are also the elements of tragedy. They are also found in tragedy. But he says that all the elements of tragedies are not found in epic, because tragedy has two more elements, which are spectacle and melody. And these two elements are only the part of tragedy. They are not found in epic. So they are not the part of epic, but they are the part of tragedy only. So this was the chapter 4 and 5th of the Poetics by Aristotle, and I have tried my best to give you the explanation of these chapters or the gist of these chapters, and I have tried to explain. I hope that you will understand and you will get benefited by this lecture. Next time we will meet with the new chapters. For just now, thank you very much. See you